Hey guys, how's it going? It's Chris, the owner of the Lions. Um, I just wanted to do a mid-season power rankings. I did offensive before, but I thought this would be something fun since we're approaching the playoffs in a couple more weeks. Um, I'm going to try to make this fairly quick, so I'll kind of go through the slides as quickly as I can. I know there's a lot of information on there. I encourage you to pause it and read everything that's on there. I hope it's interesting to everyone else, but I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. So the numbers on these slides, the overall rank is based on factoring in win percentage and potential points, but the biggest factor is points scored. So even if you have a lower win-loss record, if you have a lot of points scored and maybe you're just unlucky with a tough schedule, that's going to bump up your rankings. And it might be a little bit higher than someone that has a better record but less points scored. The red numbers underneath the overall are the win now rankings from Scott and Vinny's podcast in April. I also did the win now offense and defense next to my numbers, and that's what Scott and Vinny had from April as well. The blue numbers are the offensive win now rankings that I had in July. These aren't the overall rankings, so just so that you're not confused with that. Injured stars, future draft picks, and players off to a slow start or with potential they haven't reached yet don't play a role in determining these rankings. This is kind of a what have you done for me lately? It's just based on 2017, the actual numbers from weeks 1 to 7. The rest of season strength of schedule, I determined that by adding up the overall rankings of all the remaining opponents in the next 6 matchups. And then the lowest score is obviously the most difficult remaining schedule. So number 1 is the hardest schedule, number 32 is the easiest schedule. My commentary and strengths and weaknesses, and then everything else that I wrote, as far as I'm going to have MVP for team MVP for offense and defense, bust for offense and defense, best acquisition, those kind of things. It's my own opinion, but most of this stuff is based on quantitative information, the actual numbers, how I got the offense rankings and potential points, all of that. That's just straight from the website. So that's how that was determined. That wasn't my opinion mixed in there. So without further ado, we will get into the rankings. So number 32, I don't think anyone will be surprised by this, the 49ers. So he has a win-loss record of 1-9. He's pretty low on total points and potential points, mostly because of his offense. His defense is actually surprisingly good at number 11. And then he's in by far the hardest division, so it's not going to get any better from here. He has the third hardest schedule moving forward. His strengths, he has a couple of star players on defense, and his weakness, he has the worst offense. He actually doesn't have enough players to have an active lineup, as we mentioned before. His only tight end actually isn't on an NFL roster now, and a lot of his bench are free agents or they're healthy scratches or something like that. So obviously that contributes to having low total points and low potential points. Number 31, the Jets. So he has a 2-8 record. Similar to the 49ers, he's towards the bottom of total points and potential points. They both kind of have the same strategy for the startup, punting this year. So obviously that's going to contribute to 2017 not being as good. With this team, however, both offense and defense are pretty low. The rest of his season schedule is middle of the road. So his strengths are he has solid running backs, average but deep defense as far as having a lot of players on the bench that can help out there. His weakness is he has poor quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends. But he does have a lot of young players. There are some that have pretty good 2017 seasons so far, but they're on his taxi squad, or practice squad, I should say. So obviously that's not contributing to his total points and potential points, but if he were to use them, he'd have a better ranking. Number 30, the Giants. So he is also 2-8, lower on the total points and potential points. Getting a little bit better on offense and defense here than the last two teams. His rest of the season schedule is pretty difficult as well at number 10. His strength, he has two elite running backs. Todd Gurley is one of them, obviously. Tyvon Branch is a nice surprise too as far as defensive players. His weakness is he has below average quarterback and wide receiver. A lot of that is contributed to not having Andrew Luck all year, so he kind of had to scramble for quarterback there. So obviously he had higher expectations for that position. And then overall, his defense is fairly low scoring. So number 29 is the Colts. So he's also 2-8. Similar to the last few we've gone over, low total points, low potential points. His defense is a little bit better than his offense. Unfortunately, the rest of his season strength of schedule is the hardest in the league, so I'm not sure how much better that win-loss record is going to be. His strength, he has solid quarterbacks and safeties. He has a couple stars on defense. His weakness is he has average running backs and wide receivers, and he's pretty thin at linebacker. So number 28, the Buccaneers. Again, another 2-8 team. His total points and potential points are fairly low. That's what's contributing to that, obviously. His offense is actually decent. It's middle of the road. What's killing him here is his defense is last ranked in the league. The rest of his season is on the easier side. So hopefully he can get his record up a little bit, save some face there. So his strength is he has some star running backs and he has solid depth at wide receiver. But his weaknesses are he has below average tight end, and his defense overall is pretty thin depth, but they're obviously the lowest scoring defense. So number 27, the Patriots. We're getting a little bit better in record here, 3-7, but again, low total points, low potential points. His defense is a little bit better than his offense. Not too hard of a remaining schedule. His strengths are he has elite linebackers and safeties and two star players in Kareem Hunt and Mike Evans. His weaknesses are he has poor tight end, defensive end, and defensive tackle. So number 26, the Jaguars. He has a 3-7 record. What's hurting him here is his total points is one of the lowest. His potential points are a little bit better. And then again, offense and defense is a little bit on the lower side. He has a fairly hard rest of the season schedule. So his strengths are he has solid wide receiver, defensive tackle, and secondary, but his offense is really underachieving, and so is his linebacker core. Number 25, the Dolphins. Another 2-8 team. His total points are getting a little bit closer to middle of the road. His offense is actually pretty decent at number 10, but similar to the Buccaneers, his defense is what's really holding him back, second worst in the league. The rest of his schedule is fairly easy. And then his strengths are he has solid running backs. He has a couple stars on defense. But his weaknesses are he has thin depth at wide receiver and tight end. And overall, as I mentioned, low scoring defense, second worst defense in the league based on numbers. Number 24 is the Redskins. Getting a little bit closer to 500 here. He's at 4-6. Total points and potential points is the culprit here, a little bit on the lower side. His offense is middle of the road, and then his defense is a little on the lower side. The rest of the season schedule is fairly easy, so he should be able to improve that win-loss record. His strengths are solid quarterbacks and wide receivers, but his weaknesses are below average running back, defensive end, linebacker, and safety. So obviously I named 3 defensive positions there. That's what's contributing to his lower defense. Number 23 is the Bears. He is also at 4-6. I know there's a lot higher expectations there for his team. His total points and potential points are on the lower side. His offense is lower than I thought. I thought his offense was going to be pretty high up there. His defense is middle of the road, so that's not too bad. His rest of the season schedule is one of the easier ones, so he might be able to start to approach potential playoffs. I don't know if it's going to be enough because the NFC is really difficult. But what's anchoring his team is he has elite linebackers and solid wide receivers. His weakness, though, is he has thin depth at running back, and he has poor head coach and defensive end. Most of his coaches are getting around 0 or maybe even negative, so that's certainly not helping. Number 22, in the same division as the Bears, the Vikings, also 4-6. Starting to get a little bit more towards the middle for total points and potential points. Again, offense and defense getting a little bit closer to middle of the road. Rest of the season schedule is on the harder side. His strength is he has star running backs and safety, solid linebackers. Obviously, those rookie running backs are really helping out in that sense. Weakness, he has thin depth at wide receiver, and he has poor defensive tackles. Number 21, Broncos. Also 4-6. Very similar to the last couple that we've gone over. Getting closer to middle of the road in total points and potential points. Defense and offense getting closer to middle of the road, obviously. Rest of the season schedule is on the harder side. And he has a decent division with 2 teams that are 7-3. His strength here is solid secondary, and he has Rob Gronkowski at tight end, so that obviously is one of the star players at the position. His weakness here is below average running backs and below average wide receivers. And obviously, some of the key injuries here, he lost one of the best players in the league in Odell Beckham Jr. Number 20 is the Chargers. So here we're starting to hit 500. He's 5-5. Again, middle of the road and all of these things. I'm going to keep saying that. His offense is on the lower side, but his defense is what's helping him out here. Starting to get better half of the league in defense, but his rest of the season schedule is really hard at number 4. So he's going to have a lot of things go his way to hopefully get one of those last wildcard spots. So his strengths are he has a couple stars on defense, and he has a star player in Leonard Fournette. His weakness, he has poor quarterbacks and tight ends. He has thin depth at running back and wide receiver. And he lost Allen Robinson here. Number 19, the Panthers. So this might be a controversial ranking here. Obviously, I put him above some of the other teams that are closer to 500, even though he has a 2-8 record. He has fairly high potential points for a team that's 2-8. So if he made a couple better decisions setting his lineup, or the breaks went his way a little bit as far as what teams he was playing, I think he'd have a much better record based on what his team is actually scoring. So his offense is actually in the better half of the league. Certainly better than a 2-8 team would signify. His defense is on the lower end, and his rest of the season schedule is pretty difficult, so it might be harder to improve that win-loss record. So he has solid starters across the defense, solid starters at quarterback and tight end. Not a huge weakness, but he doesn't have any superstars at running back or wide receiver. Nothing to kind of give him an advantage over whoever he's playing against. Number 18 is the Eagles. Again, this people might think is a controversial ranking. He's obviously 8-2, one of the highest records in the league. But what's holding him back here on the ranking is his total points and his potential points. So this kind of lines up with having an easier schedule. His division is a little bit easier too. So that's why I have him ranked lower than some teams that are going to be a worse win-loss record than him. So especially potential points, he's in the lower quarter of the league in potential points. His offense is really good, number 7, but unfortunately his defense is the 4th worst in the league, so that's what's holding him back a little bit there. His rest of the season schedule is middle of the road, more on the difficult side. So his strengths are solid starters on offense, solid depth at running back, but his weaknesses are he has a fairly low scoring defense outside of cornerback, and that's going to attribute to his bottom 4 defense in the league. Number 17, the Falcons. So he is 500 right now at 5-5. Pretty much right in the average of the league for total points and potential points. His offense, we kind of expected to be a little bit better. That's on the lower side, but his defense is what's really pushing him here, number 10 overall. And he actually has the easiest rest of the season schedule, so I could definitely see him pushing for one of those wild card spots. So his strengths are solid starters on defense, a couple stars on offense, but his weaknesses are below average tight ends and underperforming running backs. I know there was higher expectations, particularly on Marshawn Lynch, and he lost Dalvin Cook and Greg Olsen. Obviously, those things are going to hurt too. Number 16, we're getting right at the midpoint of these rankings, the Ravens. So he's 6-4. Again, very similar to the Falcons, right in the middle as far as total points and potential points. And again, defense is much higher than offense, so defense is really what's helping him out in his points and in his overall ranking. And then his offense is actually not meeting the expectations we had earlier. Bottom 5 there, unfortunately. His rest of the season schedule is one of the harder ones, so it's going to be a battle trying to either catch up with the leader of the division or get one of those wild card spots. So his strengths are solid starters and depth on defense, a couple stars on offense. but his weaknesses are thin depth overall on offense. He has poor tight ends, and his quarterback's underachieving. Number 15, the Raiders. So he is 7-3. He's had a nice little comeback here with some more wins, because I know his record was a little bit lower starting out. He has pretty good total points here. His potential points are a little bit lower compared to everyone else, but that obviously means he's starting the right players, so he's getting good efficiency there. His offense is on the lower side, but his defense is actually a big surprise, coming in at 4th best. And the fact that he has the second easiest schedule, that's certainly going to help him either compete for the division here or certainly lock in a playoff spot. So his strengths are elite players at wide receiver, defensive end, linebacker, and safety. So obviously that is those are the main positions that are going to contribute to his defense being very, very good. His weaknesses are poor tight ends and poor running backs. That's what contributes to his lower offense. Number 14, the Cowboys. So again, another 500 team. His total points are pretty good, and his potential points are pretty good here. Getting into the higher rankings. His offense is middle of the road, but much better than we had expected preseason. And his defense is actually really surprising here at number 9. So obviously this is one of the teams that overall in some of the early power rankings wasn't as high, but things are coming together for him. Rest of the season schedule's middle of the road, so he might be able to compete for wild card position, or the Eagles he's only a couple games back on, and since the Eagles actually has worse total points, it might have some kind of swing there. Cowboys might be able to catch up. Strength here is super deep at tight end. He could fill his entire flex positions in tight end, and obviously that's what's helping him there. Tight end premium, so they get a little bit more for catches and yards. And then he has solid starters across his entire defense. His weaknesses, however, are below average running backs and wide receivers, so that's what's keeping his defense kind of in the middle there. Number 13 is the Saints. So he is 7-3. His total points and potential points are getting up there too, on the better side of the midpoint. His offense is middle of the road, maybe a little bit lower than we were anticipating, but his defense is actually a big surprise here at 8th place, or the 8th best defense. And then his rest of the season schedule is the 3rd easiest, so he should be able to hold on to that lead in his division. So his strength is solid starters on defense, all across the defense, but his weakness is underperforming wide receivers. Number 12, the Bills. Another team that's 7-3. His division is actually one of the easier divisions, so that contributes to his record, and obviously 3-0 in the division. But he is getting high total points and potential points. Starting to creep into one of the higher ranked teams here. His offense is very good, 6th best offense, and then his defense is kind of on the lower side, so that's obviously what's lowering his total points. The rest of the season schedule is bottom 5 in difficulty, so I don't see anyone in his division catching up. I think he has a spot locked in there. The strengths, he has solid running backs and elite secondary. His weakness is he has thin depth at all offensive positions. But the fact that he has one of the highest scoring, it really doesn't matter. Just keep using your starters. Hopefully those can help your team continue to do well. Number 11, the Titans. He is 7-3. I know a lot of us had really high expectations for him because he was absolutely loaded. Most of those players were old, but certainly the most win now team out of any other team. I certainly thought he was going to be very hard to beat. So what might be contributing there is he has better potential points than total points, so it might just be a matter of not starting the right players week to week. So his offense is better than the median, and his defense is a little bit below average. But the rest of his season is very easy, a bottom 5 schedule again, so he certainly should be able to lock up a playoff spot here. So his strengths are elite quarterback. Overall, the team is really well-rounded, and he has solid starters at every single position. His weakness is he has thin depth at most of those positions, so what's carrying him here is his starters, obviously, and moving forward, his team is old, so it's kind of an all-or-nothing thing. Hopefully he can really compete this year, but going forward, it's just going to be more and more players retiring or declining in 2018 and going forward. We're getting into the top 10 here. The Browns. Again, lower win-loss record here at 4-6. I put him above some of the teams that are obviously higher with 6-7 wins, but that can be contributed to his high total points and his high potential points. 5th highest potential points. So obviously you can see here 0-3. His division is the most difficult division in the AFC, so they're kind of all beating up on each other there. And not only that, obviously his schedule up to this point was really difficult if he can have top 10 in total points and still have a losing record. His offense here is very good, the 8th best. His defense is right around average at 17. And then the rest of his schedule is one of the easier ones, so he can still compete for one of those wild card spots despite being below 500 here. So his strengths are he has star players and solid depth across all the defensive positions, but unfortunately his weaknesses are his running backs and wide receivers are underperforming, so they're kind of not meeting early expectations. Number 9, the Steelers. Again, another team that their record is not an indication at all of how good their team is. The Browns and the Steelers are obviously both in the same division. It is a difficult division, and clearly both of them had a tough schedule to have such high points and potential points, but a low record. I'm actually shocked that, really digging into this, that he has top 3 potential points and he only has 3 wins. So it isn't even a matter of starting the wrong guys because he has 7th best total points. So it's really just a matter of drawing the short straw, definitely getting a very difficult schedule. And if he had a different schedule, I think he'd easily be over 500. He has the best offense despite being 3-7. And we had the expectation he'd have good offense too, but I certainly didn't think the number 1 offense team would have a losing record. His defense is one of the lower ones in the league, so that's what's contributing there. And unfortunately, he had a hard schedule up to this point, and he has the 6th hardest schedule moving forward, so he just can't catch a break here. His strengths, he has elite running backs and star player in Melvin Ingram. His weakness, he's thin at wide receiver and linebacker. Number 8 is the Chiefs. So he's leading his division right now at 7-3. Raiders are also 7-3. Top 10 in both total points and potential points. Starting to get closer to top 10 in both offense and defense. So both of his are strong. He doesn't have one that's holding him back a little bit. So that certainly makes him a well-rounded team. Rest of the season schedule is on the easier side, so he should be able to lock up a playoff position, whether it's his division or wild card. So his strengths are he has great tight ends, and he's solid across all positions on defense. His weaknesses are poor quarterbacks, below average wide receivers, and his biggest stars are hurt in David Johnson and J.J. Watt. Number 7, the Packers. So he's at 500, and he's actually one of the best teams in the league. And of course, he's in my division. But what hurts him here, I think, was having a difficult schedule. A lot of his games, he didn't lose by very many points. Also, having the second most potential points, it might have been a contributing factor that he didn't start the best players, but again, he still has top 10 total points, so it's really just a matter of difficult schedule. Another thing that's holding him back here is he has a lower ranked offense because he has a very good defense, so that if his offense was a little bit better, I think it might kind of push him over the top and make him one of the teams that has a better win-loss record. Luckily, he has an easier schedule moving forward, so he's definitely in the mix to compete for the division with me and compete for a wild card spot. So his strengths, he has the best defense by far. He's elite and deep at every single position. Even if he had a bunch of injuries or bye weeks or anything, it's not gonna affect him at all. He could really just throw a dart and set a lineup, and all of those defensive players are gonna do really well. His weakness is he has no stars on offense with Rodgers being hurt, particularly running back and wide receiver. He's finding players that are giving him enough points, but there's really no household names there. And obviously, losing Aaron Rodgers is what's going to hurt his offense here. Number 6, the Rams. So he actually has the best record in the league right now at 9-1. That NFC West is by far the hardest division. I mean, as you can see, we've hit number 6, and this is only the second team in the division that we've looked at. The other team was the 49ers, who were 32. So the fact that the third ranked team in this division is number 6, that actually says a lot. But he has been able to be 3-0 in the division. That's contributing to his 9-1 record. Total points really high, number 6 overall. Potential points also top 10. His offense is really exceeding expectations here. Top 5 offense. And his defense is middle of the road, but obviously enough to get by. His rest of the season schedule is not too hard, so he should definitely, if he's not able to hold on to the top spot in the division, certainly he's going to get a playoff spot at wild card. So his strengths are elite starters at running back and wide receiver, and he has solid starters all across defense. Once you get to these higher ranked teams, you're going to start to get nitpicky. So a weakness is he has average tight ends. Obviously, that's not a big weakness, but had to put something there. So we're getting into the top 5 here. The Bengals. So he is 8-2, 3-0 in his division. Again, The Steelers and the Browns were both in the top 10 range, so very difficult division, but the Bengals are the best team in that division and the only team that I mentioned there that has a winning record. I know the Ravens have a winning record. They're also in the top half of the rankings, so really difficult division, but the Bengals are the best team in that one. Total points, we're getting into the top 5 here. Potential points also very high at 9th best. One of the best offenses in the league. We had that expectation going in. So he's got the 3rd best offense there. His defense is on the better side of above average there at 13. And then the rest of the season's schedule is pretty average in difficulty, so he's definitely going to be able to either keep his lead in the division or certainly lock in a playoff spot sooner rather than later. So his strengths are elite starters at running back, tight end, and linebacker, but his weaknesses are below average wide receivers. Number 4, the Seahawks. So he's also 8-2, but he's 1-2 in his division because the division is very, very hard. The Rams, as I mentioned before, were 9-1, so major competition at the top up there. His total points are 2nd best in the league. So if he had a easier division, he's running away with this thing. Obviously, they're beating up on each other, so his schedule is just really difficult there. Potential points are pretty good too. His offense is good enough to help him get 2nd best total points, but obviously his defense at 2nd best is what's really pushing his team here to have the 2nd best total points. Unfortunately, the schedule's not going to get any easier. He's competing against all of his division rivals again, obviously. I know me and him play each other next week, so it's still going to be hard going forward. So tough schedule up to this point, tough schedule going forward. He was still able to get 8-2, so hopefully that can continue for him. So his strengths are solid running backs, elite secondary, solid starters on defense. And his weaknesses are average to below average wide receivers, but I mean, that's not holding him back too much. Number 3, the Cardinals. So that's the 4th team in this NFC West division. Super strong division. Rams are 9-1. Seahawks are 8-2. Cardinals are 8-2. They're beating up on each other. They all have top 10 total points and potential points. Really tough for everybody involved here. Cardinals, number 4 total points, number 6 potential points. So obviously, really strong team here. Getting around the top 5 in both offense and defense. So really good on both sides of the ball. Again, his schedule is not going to get any easier. 9th hardest schedule moving forward. Overall, the team is really well-rounded. He's elite at quarterback and running back, and that's even without David Johnson. His weakness is his top player, David Johnson, got hurt. We thought that was going to be huge. Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson, he was certainly the team to beat there. His weakness is he's a little bit thin on depth at wide receiver. Number 2, the Lions, my team. So I'm also 8-2. The total points scored, I got the 3rd highest and the 4th highest potential points. So starting the right players, obviously. Offense is decent, but what's really helping me out here is a strong defense. And much like the Seahawks and the Cardinals, it's really going to be a tough schedule moving forward. I mean, I have to play mostly playoff teams moving forward. And then I also have the Packers in my division, so it's going to be a tough one. It might come down to the last week. I have a doubleheader against the Packers and the Texans, so um, that might make or break me. I might even miss out on winning the division, even though I'm 8-2. So my strengths, I'm well-rounded across all positions, really deep on defense. Every position I have a lot of guys I can start there. And then obviously I have Kareem Hunt. He's what's really carrying my offense, unfortunately, because I'm riddled with injuries on offense. I lost 4 out of my top 5 startup picks: Beckham, Allen Robinson, Eifert, and Spencer Ware. So, I mean, kind of scrapping together an offensive starting lineup here. They're underperforming, and the depth is pretty thin on offense. So, thankfully, my defense is carrying me there. And then number 1, the Texans. So he is 8-2, but he has the highest total points and the highest potential points. He made a bunch of good trades here with getting Ezekiel Elliott, getting Rob Gronkowski, drafted really well with wide receivers. So we already had the anticipation the expectation he was going to have a good offense. So he has second best offense here, and he still has a top 5 defense. Rest of the season schedule is average difficulty, so especially since the AFC is a little bit easier, he's certainly going to lock in a playoff spot fairly soon. His strengths, he has elite starters at running back, wide receiver, and tight end. He has a top scoring offense, so obviously that's contributing to having the most total points. A weakness, again, kind of a nitpick thing, just because I need something. He has nothing behind Zeke at running back, but I mean, if you're only starting one running back as the minimum requirement and all your wide receivers are really good, you don't really have to worry about it unless Zeke gets his suspension, and maybe that kind of hurts you at the end of the season or going into the fantasy playoffs. You got to hope that he's not going to get suspended, because that would really be the only weakness on your team, not having a running back at that spot. And then here is the playoff picture. So as I mentioned before, really strong. We'll start with the NFC. Really strong NFC West division. Right now the Rams are at the top of the conference at 9-1. They're undefeated in their division. Obviously, we're getting all those divisional games in the next couple weeks. Eagles are also 3-0 in their division, but that's a little bit more because his division is not as hard. And then going down the list too, my team, although I'm 8-2, 5th hardest schedule. I know the Cardinals and Seahawks both 8-2, very hard schedules there. It might come to a case where one of the 3 of us misses out if Packers or Falcons can kind of rally at the end here, because both of them have easier schedules. I know the Falcons have the easiest schedule. Considering that the Saints have the 3rd easiest schedule, the 2 of them are going to be battling it out for the NFC South title there. One of them might be able to get a wild card spot. Packers might be able to get the division from me, or they'll get the wild card spot there. You can't count the Cowboys out because, as I said, the Eagles only have in the 20s for total points and potential points. Cowboys are a little bit better in that sense, so the tables might turn on that one. Cowboys might get the division there. And then moving on to the AFC, again, the Texans and the Bengals should pretty much be untouchable at the top there. Both really strong teams. Even though the AFC North is the hardest division, Bengals were still able to be 3-0 there. And the 2 biggest competition for the Bengals there are the Browns and the Steelers really have a lot of they have the cards stacked against them. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but you never know. Anything could happen here. But I mean, the Bengals have their division locked up most likely. Texans and Bengals both have average difficulty schedules, so I can see both of them having a bye going into the playoffs. Again, Bills have a fairly easy division, so I can see them certainly mathematically locking that up in the next week or two. Chiefs and Raiders are going to battle it out here for the West, so that'll definitely be an interesting situation to monitor over there. Both of them have fairly easy schedules moving forward too, so I mean, both of them might creep up to whoever wins that division might creep up to number 3 seed over there. Certainly, whoever doesn't win the division has a really good shot at getting a wild card spot. I'd put my money on that. Titans, unfortunately, have the best team in the league in their division, but I mean, they have a really easy schedule coming up, and they have a good team. So they're only one game behind the Texans. You never know what can happen, but certainly at 7-3, they should be okay getting one of the last wild card spots. And then the other teams in the AFC, obviously Ravens, they have tough competition there in their division with the Bengals. They might not be able to get the division from the Bengals, but certainly they're only one game out of the wild card spot, so they're definitely in the mix. Their schedule's a little bit harder than these other wild card teams, but I mean, they should be able to be right there towards the end. And then the Chargers and the Broncos, even though Chargers are at 500 and Broncos are a little bit below 500, you look at their division and they're really only a couple spots out of competing for the division title. And obviously, they're only a couple spots out of wild card too. So, I mean, you could probably even get a wild card spot with 9 or 10 wins in the AFC if certain things fall where they need to. So any of those teams could obviously still be in the mix. So that's the whole podcast here. Like I said, there's a lot on all of those slides. I wanted to go as quick as I could. I didn't want to make it really long and bore people if they kind of just wanted to graze over certain things, but I definitely encourage you to look back at some of the slides. There's a lot of information on there. I did put a bunch of work in there, but I had other things that I didn't specifically talk about with each team based on kind of superlatives. What are the team MVPs? What are the busts? So those might be fun to look at, but definitely go back and maybe just pause the podcast and take a look at those if you're interested. Hope you guys enjoyed it overall. Had a lot of fun making this. The rest of the season is going to be super exciting. It's been a lot of fun so far too. I love all the involvement and the chatting on the group me. So this is really a fun league. I wanted to add a little bit more to it since we haven't had a podcast in a while. So good luck to everyone for the rest of the season. Hopefully I inspired some other people. Maybe they can make some podcasts, and we'll just really enjoy the rest of the season. All right. See you guys later.